If you're in the market for a new car or plan on buying one within your lifetime, then this video is for you. Options, options, options. There are so many options out there. And while that generally is a good thing, it can also be quite overwhelming. But not too long ago, your options were limited by how much you were willing to spend. Back in the 90s, a top-of-the-line compact car would set you back around 600,000 pesos. These days, an equivalent of that would cost you around 1.5 million pesos. But with a budget like that, you no longer have to settle for a compact car. You can now get an MPV, an SUV, a crossover, a pickup truck, or maybe even a really nice watch. And even if you're set on what type of vehicle you want, there are still so many to choose from. And this video isn't going to tell you what you should buy, because that's your problem. And that really is a good problem to have. This video will merely cover 5 things you need to realize before you buy a new car. And since a car is probably the second most expensive thing you'll ever buy, it might be a good idea to stick around till the end. So without further ado, let's get it on. Point number 1. Brand snobs and brand loyalists are missing out. There are many folks out there who are either brand loyalists or brand snobs. Brand loyalists will treat buying a new car like a pre-arranged wedding, while brand snobs will treat less popular brands like it has the coronavirus. Now, if you fall under any of these categories, you're missing out. And I can totally understand if you're a brand loyalist because you experienced a car that has a really good track record, hence your loyalty. But there's a lot of folks out there who simply jump on the bandwagon, and in any case, that shouldn't stop you from exploring your options. And you should never dismiss a brand that you're not familiar with, because some of the new players out there are actually pretty good choices. And even brands or manufacturers that didn't have such a good reputation in the past, a lot of them have made leaps and bounds in the right direction. And if you check out these cars, you might even be surprised with their fit and finish. A lot of them are on par, if not far superior, to some of the more popular or mainstream options out there. There was a time when buying a new car from an unknown manufacturer meant that you'd be taking home a piece of turd on wheels. But those days are long gone. In fact, the flip side of that coin is that more established brands are now inferior when it comes to features, performance, and drivability against some of the less known contenders out there. Point number 2. Being logical is overrated. A lot of us find great comfort in making rational decisions. We love to nerd out on specs as we comb through numbers and figures to tell ourselves that we're making an informed decision. But honestly, I think we should pay more attention to how a car makes us feel. I mean, you wouldn't choose your spouse based on quantifiable measures. Like, what's her IQ? What about her vital statistics? Or how many times does she make me laugh per day? It just doesn't work that way, and I don't see why it should be any different when buying a new car. Now, I'm not saying that you should go out there and buy a Miata if you have 3 to 5 kids to chauffeur around. Not unless you can bear to watch them take the bus, just so you can get your dose of Jinbei Thai. On the other hand, Miata is always the answer. But kidding aside, what I'm really trying to say is that you should take your wants into consideration just as much as your needs. And the good thing is that manufacturers are really starting to understand that regardless of what a vehicle's primary purpose is, it should also be able to steer your emotions. Take pickup trucks for example. Hardly any of them are purely utilitarian. You can spec them out to be really badass or deliver that X factor aside from providing decent towing and payload capacity. And that brings me to point number 3. Spec sheets and brochures don't tell the whole story. Like I said earlier, we love numbers. In fact, each time there's a spec sheet battle online, the model with the most horsepower ends up getting the most votes. And honestly, I find that rather absurd. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't take a vehicle's specs into consideration. All I'm saying is that that should never be your sole basis for which vehicle you should buy. Why? Because there's no true measure of how satisfied you're going to be. In the same way that when you look at life, there's no true measure for success. You don't measure that by how big your bank account is, or the number of likes a video gets, or the number of subscribers your channel has. It just doesn't work that way. But I would appreciate it if you like and subscribe to the channel. But going back to my point, there's nothing on the brochure or spec sheet that will tell you how soft the leather is, the sound the door makes when you close it, or how quick the car responds to your steering inputs. Think of it like looking at a personal ad. It may say that she likes pina coladas and getting caught in the rain, and as exciting as that sounds, it shouldn't be enough to seal the deal. Oh, I forgot, it's the 21st century.
It's swipe left or swipe right now.
Huh? How does that work? Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that you should never get overexcited based on what's written on paper. You should always take that a step further to see how that translates to something you can actually feel or benefit from. I'm gonna go back to horsepower. Let's say you have two cars. Car A has 180 horsepower, while car B has 150. And since this is hypothetical, let's say everything else about these two cars is exactly the same. In this example, it may seem as if car A is the better choice. But it's important to know that horsepower rating is the car's peak power, which is reached at one point in the rev range. So let's say that car A's 180 horsepower is reached at 6,000 RPM, while car B's is there at 3,000 RPM. For someone who doesn't max the car out and is in the market for a daily driver, car B actually makes more sense. I remember when the Honda Civic SIR was released back in the late 90s. Everyone made such a big deal about the fact it had 160 horsepower, which was significantly more than the regular Civic's already potent 127 horsepower. The SIR was and still is an awesome car. Good luck finding a pristine example for under $500,000. But as good as that car was, you had to rev it out to almost 8,000 RPM to unleash the 160 horses. And I doubt if everyone who bought one was able to utilize its full potential. Brand new cars are not perfect. Don't let that new car smell fool you, no matter how good it smells.
She had the smell of a brand new car. That's just about the finest smell in the world. Except maybe for pussy.
Don't let it make you think that the car is flawless just because it's brand spanking new. Be on the lookout for panel gaps, alignment issues, paint imperfections, and quality. This speaks volumes in terms of the car's build quality, ergo could also be used as an indicator of durability. I've seen brand new cars made by established and supposedly reputable car companies that have hideous and poor build quality. The fit and finish is so poor that it feels like highway robbery despite the relatively affordable price tags. We're talking alignment issues, exposed screws, creaky panels, and so on. And I bring this up because sometimes we assume a brand new car is all good and only start seeing these imperfections after rolling out of the dealership. On to the fifth and final point. Some new cars drive like shit. Okay, I think this is the most important point here. Take a test drive. Cars are not cheap, and unless you have money growing on trees in your backyard, it is imperative for you to take it out and test drive it before buying it. I know so many folks who bought new cars without test driving it. And that's like buying a television without turning it on first. It's like marrying someone without even having a conversation with them. A lot of people don't take the test drive because they're pretty sure that there's nothing wrong with the new car. It's brand new. Or they think it'll be just fine. Well, the fact of the matter is, a test drive is not only about finding defects, because the sad truth is, some cars drive like shit. Even if there's nothing wrong with them. Personally, I can think of two models made by established manufacturers that I wanted to own until I drove them. Both have impressive specs and also look pretty good. But the deal breaker for me is that the way they steer. The steering response was so slow. Both cars felt so disconnected. And if you want to know what vehicles I'm referring to, well, send me an email. I'll be happy to tell you. But the point I'm trying to get across is that the way a vehicle drives could be a deal breaker. Each new car will have distinct driving dynamics. So I urge you to get behind the wheel of as many different vehicles as you can to see which one provides the most comfort and responds best to your inputs. And, don't just drive around the block like it's your first day of driving school. Drive it as you normally would and try to see how the car copes with various road conditions. So that's basically it. The bottom line is to explore, exploit, and experience as many options as you can before making that decision. And if you want to take that advice when finding a life partner, well, that's totally up to you. But I really hope that this helps you find the right car. Thanks for watching.